Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We are thrilled to have you here. During today's webinar, you're going to hear from Adrian Sanchez, who is the HR Systems Manager at Wegmans Food Markets on their Workday journey. My name is Walter Edwards. I'm with Collaborative Solutions. I'm part of the Strategy and Transformation practice here, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we get started, I kind of want to go over a couple house rules. So everyone's going to be on mute and remain muted throughout the presentation. Please use the chat function that will be available. So if you have questions, please send those through the chat feature. At the end of the prepared presentation, we will have a Q&A session where we'll be monitoring the chat and be able to answer your questions then. If for some reason we don't get to your question during this presentation, then we will follow up after the webinar. And additionally, the webinar is being recorded, so this will be available for playback tomorrow. So let's get started. So a little bit about Collaborative Solutions for those of you who are not familiar with us, who haven't been introduced to us before. And then as soon as I'm done with this little intro on Collaborative, I will turn it over to Adrian. So for those, Collaborative Solution, we are the longest standing Workday partner, and we have served over 800, I'm sorry, I'm not slipping my slides. There we are. Okay, so apologize for not advancing the slides here. So Collaborative Solutions. So we have 800 plus Workday customers, and like I said, we are the longest legacy Workday partner. One of the things that we're most proud of as an organization is our 98% customer satisfaction rate that you can see up there in the left-hand corner. We're also proud that we have expertise, really deep expertise in the Workday, and we have over 100 different product leads, and we've also deployed in 125 different countries, so we have a lot of global experience. One of the other things I want to hit on is that we do also have an all-encompassing advisory practice that includes both the strategy and transformation practice that I'm a part of, as well as a robust change management organization. So we really can help provide a full end-to-end solution, both from the Workday implementation, prior to that even through the change management effort of implementing Workday, and then into post-production support. Additionally, we're really proud of the Best Workplace Awards. We won a lot of those. And what that really means to us is that, you know, people stick around here at Collaborative. We have our longevity of our consultants is much higher than most of the other system implementers. So we're able to keep the good employees around, which means that the customer ends up getting a better experience and more experienced consultants. So with that, I want to turn it over to Adrian. Before I do, we also want to mention that we have worked with a lot of different grocery customers, including Whole Foods, Spartan Nash, Sprouts, and Wegmans. So with that, I will turn it over to Adrian to talk about Wegman, and then we'll go into Q&A after that.
Great, thank you, Walter. And I also want to thank Collaborative for having this event. As Walter mentioned, my name is Adrian Sanchez, and I am the HR Systems Manager here at Wegmans. Our team is responsible for the HR technology stack, and of course, Workday is a big piece of that. I've been with Wegmans for 19 and a half years now, 16 of those years, which were really spent in IT in a number of different roles. In the last 3 years, I've spent here in HR, and that really started with the Workday project. Now, when Collaborative approached us about the idea of a virtual grocery roundtable, we were excited to be a part of that. And the initial challenge really became, what's the right topic for us to begin this conversation? Ultimately, we came to the idea that sharing a journey might just be a logical starting point for us. And we really think that this is going to be a spark for many questions and ideas for specific areas or content that the group might want to dive into a little bit deeper in the future. So we certainly hope that you find the session informative and thought-provoking. If there are any questions, of course, as Walter mentioned, please go ahead and post those to the chat, and we'll get to those as we can. So now a little bit about Wegmans. We were founded in 1916, and our headquarters remain here in Rochester, New York. We have 103 stores in 7 states. That includes New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina. And we have over 52,000 employees, almost 90% of which really make up our store operations. If you think about our former HCM or HR system stack, we had deployed Lawson, and Lawson was our solution for about 20 years here, so we had it for a long time. But we also had other solutions. So we had Taleo for recruiting, we had SumTotal for performance as well as learning, and then we had a number of systems that were more manual in nature or offline or kind of built in-house. As far as the Workday product suite that we deployed as part of our implementation, of course, core HCM, US payroll, benefits, compensation, onboarding, recruiting, talent, and learning. And we are officially Workday customer number 1435. And then the final thing that, and certainly not least, I want to talk about, Wegmans is very proud to be ranked number 3 on Fortune's magazine's 2020 list of the 100 best companies to work for. And we have been on that list since the list was started. So very proud of that and the people that allow us to make that happen. So our next slide tells a little bit more about the Wegmans story. And so Walter, if you could advance this. This is a family-owned business. So this business has been led by the Wegmans family since 1916. And ultimately, there are 3 key elements that have helped build just a very solid, strong business here. It's the fact that it's family-owned, it's values-based, and it's mission-driven. Robert Wegman, as you see here on the right, established this years ago our employee-first philosophy. And that, of course, continues under Danny, Colleen, and Nicole today. Ultimately, we believe that simple, transparent communications help us all stay on the same page and continue to feel like a small company as we grow. Now, let's get into what started us on our journey to Workday. So in this next slide, talk a little bit about what we looked like pre-Workday. And probably some of you out there are very familiar with this approach. Especially if you had a legacy system as we did that was 20 years in the making. So we had this hodgepodge of technical and technology, sometimes best of breed systems. We also had some manual processes, and then we had some limited integrations in between some bolt-on applications that we might have built in-house because of some deficiencies in what we were able to provide through the HR system. So really, the discussion for us started back in 2010. And at the time, really, leaders were thinking about the talent management system and what we had, knowing that ultimately we needed to do something in that space. But as those conversations started and continued, it really quickly turned into a conversation around having something more holistic around our entire human capital management, as they call it, our HR suite. Today, as this slide indicates, or at the time, as the slide indicates, because we had all these disparate systems, there was a lot of manual work happening. There was a lot of work to maintain some of the integrations between those systems. Data sometimes was very difficult to get to. So ultimately, those conversations continued to evolve. And in 2015, the team got approval to move forward with really what was going to be a transformational project for us to identify and implement a holistic HCM solution. So that moves us forward into 2016 when we partnered with Deloitte for an RFP process. And at the time, that included our legacy system, Lawson. So they were part of that conversation. Oracle with PeopleSoft, SAP with SuccessFactors, and of course, Workday. And so from there, you know, why Workday? You know, we went through a very exhaustive RFP process, and what led us to the decision of Workday. So the next slide talks a little bit about that. And ultimately, you know, through that RFP process, we truly believe that we had found the perfect partner in Workday. And this slide talks a little bit to some of those reasons. And I just want to caution folks, I know there's some information here that you're going to look at, such as, you know, 100 best company and the number of customers they have. This slide is based on the decision that we made in 2017. So this is 2017 data. And at the time, they had 1,400 customers, but that included big customers such as Amazon, Google, Whole Foods, Wawa, Smuckers, Constellation Brands, which is another company here in the Rochester area, Rochester Regional Health, Cornell University, just to name a few. We found through the process that they were a very innovative and agile partner, just like Collaborative, just like Wegmans. They had a very customer focused approach, and they were leading in a number of different areas. And of course, that incredible customer service speaks to their approach as well. I want to talk a little bit about Dave and Anil. So they were founded in 2005 by previous leaders of PeopleSoft. And what's interesting is that both Dave and Anil have ties to upstate New York, and of course are very familiar with Wegmans. Anil even went to high school in the Rochester area. So some very interesting ties for us. One of the other things that this slide talks a little bit about is the strong user community. And for anybody who is a customer of Workday today, you understand what that means. They have over 35 million employees that are part of their customer base. And if you think about that and what they're able to do and what they learn from those customers and how they partner with their customers to understand what's working well and what are the opportunities and how can we improve our product to make it better for you. That approach is really what we were looking for. We were looking for a partner, not just a solution, not just a technology. We wanted a partner that was going to grow with us, that was going to listen to us, that was going to be innovative like they are, and really take that agile approach. So we were very, very happy to find that in Workday and be able to make that partnership. So as I think about that process throughout 2016, it was many, many months of conversation and discussion and demos. But once we chose Workday and we were on that road, what were the benefits? What was that going to provide us? And this next slide kind of talks a little bit to the benefits of Workday, their approach with a cloud delivery platform and model. So some of the things we were looking forward to, certainly, the fact that we knew that Workday was going to get us a little bit out of the IT business. So out of the business of managing upgrades, patches, backups, storage, system maintenance, performance tuning, disaster recovery, all those things that ultimately can be time consuming, a little bit of a headache at times. And ultimately for us, we wanted to focus on our employees and not necessarily the maintenance of a system. So as we think about that, getting out of that IT world and some of that and getting more into the business, focus on the business goals and objectives, focusing on industry trends, innovations, some other benefits that ultimately came out of choosing a cloud delivery platform, being able to deploy the newest innovations in a very rapid manner, having those upgrades available to us, having better service levels and lower operating costs overall. So again, a ton of benefits for us and ultimately allowing us to make sure that our focus was on the business and what we could do there. A few other things from a Workday perspective that certainly was intriguing at the time and we learned more about as we implemented. The power of one, and I think you have all heard that phrase with Workday, and having that integrated user interface with intuitive clicking, being able to configure versus customize. In our old world, we certainly had a lot of customizations, and I think you can all understand and appreciate how much management and maintenance customizations can cause. Also the pain that might be suffered during an upgrade process. For us, for example, upgrades in the old world might not happen for 2 to 3 years just because the customizations that you build, those upgrades might take 6 to 9 months to complete with all the processes and systems and coordination that needed to happen and testing, of course. So of course you couldn't take something like that on every year and you would have to wait 2 to 3 years. And so in the meantime, there might be some functionality that you're very interested in, but you wouldn't be able to deploy it until you got to that upgrade. So certainly another benefit of partnering with Workday is to be able to enjoy and appreciate and take advantage of those 2 upgrades every year. So moving on into the project and thinking about, what was going to make us success? What are the keys to success for this transformational project, which we knew was going to take a lot of resources, a lot of time and commitment from our people. So, ultimately, we identified these keys to success for the implementation, and we knew that we were going to be successful by establishing guiding principles to drive design and simplify our decisions, by focusing on modernizing and optimizing and enabling technology-driven business processes. So if you think about that, we had built all of these processes in our prior system, and the approach and the way that we wanted to make sure that we focused on this was not doing what we call a lift and shift and take all of those business processes that we built in the old world and just kind of move them over to Workday and say, okay, this is how we did it in Lawson, and so let's just take that same approach and process and move it over to Workday. That wasn't going to work, and we certainly did not want to take that approach. So we needed to make sure that we were modernizing all of our business processes, looking at every single one of them and looking for those opportunities to become more efficient. We also wanted to make sure we kept an eye on the big picture. What are we striving for? What's the ultimate goal? What are our going back to those guiding principles, making sure we kept an eye on that. We wanted to commit to timely decision making. We knew that was going to guide our design and implementation. So decisions needed to be very timely. When you're approaching or trying to tackle a project such as this, every single decision and any timeline that takes impacts your ability to deliver in the time frame that you want to. And then finally, well, not finally, really establishing a strong governance framework. And to me, that is really the last 2 bullets. Making sure that we understood roles, responsibilities, ownership, having clear expectations, and with that, having strong stakeholder engagement before, during, and after implementation. And our leadership couldn't have been better throughout this whole project and more supportive. They knew that we needed this. Ultimately, what we talked about is, what got us through our first 100 years isn't going to get us through our next 100 years. So we needed to make sure that we had an approach and a system that was going to grow with us. And that engagement and that support from our leadership allowed us to get through this very large project. So building on these keys, we established those guiding principles, and they're covered in the next slide. Here, so what are we building for? Ultimately, this is really what guided us through the project, and it became a constant reminder for us. We wanted to make sure that what we were building was simple. It had mobile first in mind. It attained our goal of having self-service for our employees. And another great benefit, of course, of Workday is having real-time data and access to that real-time data. So going to those guiding principles, we wanted to build a system that provided transparency and visibility to real-time employee data. We wanted something that allowed us to get to know our people and find out what they love to do. As I mentioned, the family has always put our employees first, and that's what has made us successful. It's what has made us a great place to work. And with that focus, we need systems that allow us to make sure that is our #1 priority. So we also wanted those opportunities to further empower our employees and be able to drive their own development. Tools that helped us to develop future leaders for the company and plan for the future. If you think about succession planning and the capabilities that Workday has in that area. Certainly visibility to people measures and analytics to provide valuable insights and opportunities for, again, us to know and understand our employee base better. And then finally, that other one that's very important to us is identifying opportunities to maintain that small company family feel as we grow. This started as essentially a grocery cart back in 1916, and it's always been a family owned and run company. And with that, we want everyone in our organization to feel part of that family. And as we've grown to 52,000 plus, you can imagine that becomes difficult. But if we have the right tools and we have the right leadership in place and the right values guiding us, then we feel that we can do that. So now that we've established our guiding principles, what does this project look like? Knowing that it's a transformational project, what does that roadmap look like? And this next slide starts to talk a little bit about our approach for the project. So as we sat back, we've chosen our partner in Workday, and we've turned, and they've also helped us with the implementation. We also partnered with Deloitte for some of the transformational aspects of the project. The project team really decided that ultimately, to be successful, it would be best if we broke this up into phases. Phase one was really all about building the foundation, and ultimately this was really the heavy lift. It's about getting all of that employee data that we had in the system of 20 plus years and being able to migrate that into Workday. It also included payroll, benefits, basic visibility, and self-service. That self-service that previously wasn't available in Lawson. So with all of those functions, payroll especially, that it's such an important piece of what we're doing and delivering to our employees. You can't get that wrong, and that's got to be right day one. So that was really the heavy lift, but it established the foundation of what we would do in the subsequent phases. So after rollout and that initial go live in January of 2018, we got into phase two. And that really was about hypercare initially, right? So we went live, great, but it's a brand new system, and there's always opportunities when you implement a system. We were so pleasantly surprised with how well it went. We did not have any major issues at all. You know, and a lot of that can be attributed to our people. Our people are fantastic. They have just a desire to make sure that everything goes as planned. They have such high standards and care for each other that it was really their approach throughout the entire project that allowed for that to happen, and really led to, for us, the first couple of months having very, very few things that we needed to really address. And to me, I would call those just small little hiccups along the way that are going to come with the implementation of any new technology system. The other challenge for us in phase one is, almost, actually less than 2 months after going live, we were faced with an upgrade, an immediate upgrade, major release for the March release of Workday. So again, having a partner such as Workday really helped us prepare for that, make sure that we had all the right processes in place to handle the testing that goes along with that. You really have to have a commitment to testing. But if you do that, then things can go very, very smoothly for you. So moving into phase two, this is where we started to implement some of that functionality that was ultimately went live in January, but we hadn't taken advantage of. So that included our wage increase programs, some of that information that we talk about that allows us to get to know our employees better, and that includes people pages, starting to think about performance plans, and we weren't doing them in the system, but it was about understanding that the capability and the functionality there, and then we started to do our implementation for external recruiting, and then that ultimately went live in August of 2018. And what we found throughout that process is that all of the work that we did in that foundational phase one approach really made phase two so much simpler, so much more efficient for everybody. We had learned so much through the implementation that we actually ended up leaning on our partners a lot less in phase two, and certainly in phase three. And we had a strong team that we had built through that process. So as I mentioned, external recruiting went live in August of 2018. And then shortly after that, we went live with performance plans for our leaders, and this, managers and above, starting in December, which is when we start to kick off and start to think about our goals for the following year. Phase three was all about learning, and we had a go live in August of 2019 for learning. And ultimately, this is one of Workday's kind of newer modules. And to be honest with you, when we first signed up with Workday, it wasn't a deployed product in any production tenants at the time, but they had such a great vision about what learning can be and should be, that we certainly were very comfortable with taking that leap of faith, and they certainly came through for us. So we went live in August of 2019 with learning, and have been learning ever since about the opportunity there, and some of the benefits that Workday Learning provides, having our learning system as part of our overall HCM solution compared to an external system as it was before. All the wealth of data and information that's available to us now. And that really starts to talk about reporting and analytics. Ultimately, in phase one, we weren't so focused on some of the analytics side. We were more focused on operational reporting, getting information out of the system that we had done previously. Certainly, our friends in accounting had need for reporting, payroll, benefits, et cetera. So there's that operational reporting that's going to be part of any system. But as we got into phase three, that's really when we started to look into true analytics and building not just analytics and dashboards, but insights into our employee base and all of our people and our stores, and how do we get to know our people better and understand what's happening out there. So I'm very excited about the progress that's been made there. We've got a people insights essential dashboard now that dives into some essential areas such as diversity, development, retention. As I'm sure all of you are aware, retention is a big one for us. So we want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that and understanding the trends and how we compare to some of the industry. So that was our first three phases, and a lot of work that was happening in that. On the bottom there, you see some of the things that kind of went across all of those phases, right? We needed to make sure we had an eye on change management, on training and communication. And we just have some fantastic departments that helped with that. So we've got an employee communications department that helps with some of that communication and change management. We've got a training and development department that was just fantastic in helping people, especially those power users of Workday, understand the functionality in the system and how it can work for them. And our focus throughout this project has always been on the employee experience. There's certainly a lot of information out there about, if you have built an app with a bad employee experience, people aren't going to come back and they're not going to use it. So we wanted to make sure that it was an intuitive experience for everybody, that they could come in, they could learn quickly. They wouldn't need a lot of job aids to help them do what they needed to do from day to day. So, and we certainly know that Workday has that same approach. So now that we got through phase three, that certainly was a big celebration for us, but we knew we weren't done. So we knew there was this ongoing phase. And Workday really provides us with the foundation to build for the future. So it's about optimization. How can we enhance that employee experience? What new functionality has Workday provided that we might want to take a look at and maybe deploy? Are there new tools? Are there other improvements that they've made to our system that, again, we can make available to our people and improve that experience every day and improve the opportunity there? This is also where a partner like Collaborative is so valuable. We partnered with Collaborative this past year because they bring tremendous knowledge and experience to a constantly evolving ecosystem. I have a tremendous team of individuals that are supporting Workday today, and they have a lot of knowledge. But at the end of the day, it's very difficult to keep up with everything that's happening in the Workday realms because of those two major releases every year. And Collaborative has just been fantastic in helping us understand some of those enhancements, helping us implement those enhancements, and just be a great resource for our folks as they continue to learn and grow through this process. So ongoing for us is just continually looking at, where are our opportunities and how can we do that? Wegmans has always been an organization that continuous improvement is built into who we are. And it's similar in Workday. So on this next slide, dive a little bit deeper into that phase one timeline. And this talks a little bit about, what that looked like and the amount of coordination and work that went into that. So we really started the planning process started kind of late December of 2016, but really finalized in January 2017. And ultimately, that was our project kickoff and got us into the architect phase. And from the architect phase, you go into the configure and prototype, then to test, and then to deploy. What's great about Workday is they have a fantastic methodology that if you follow that methodology, it will lead to success for you. But just like us, of course, you've got to have your own thoughts in this. You've got to have your own approach and guiding principles to make sure you understand exactly what your goals are and what you want to do. But ultimately, between Wegmans and Workday and our partnership with Deloitte as well, that's really where that architect phase becomes really important. Talking about the solution, the design of the solution, talking through the requirements, making sure that we got it right. And as I mentioned earlier, making sure that we're have an eye towards every single business processing and identifying opportunities to make that better. If we can eliminate some, that's also a great goal of ours. So that architect phase became very, very important. And so in that first build, as you think about the configure and prototype, this is where they talk about being 70% production ready. So you kind of create your first tenant and you're building data, and you start to have the customer confirmation sessions. But there's a long way to go. 70% production ready really came from the architect phase, but there's things that you need to do throughout that to react to. Is it working the way that you had intended? Are there opportunities to make it better and more efficient? So really the configure and prototype and the testing phases for us is certainly a huge, huge lift. And we'll talk a little bit later about some of the opportunities there. But we know that in the conversations that we've had with other customers, with Workday themselves, this was a very involved and aggressive timeline, just considering the size and the scope of the project. And as you can imagine, there were many, many people involved in this project. And we knew in order to be successful, we needed to limit what else we were doing. So the other part of 2017 for us was to limit any other projects and really just focus on keeping the business going and the Workday implementation project. So once we got to January of 2018, what then? Now that we're live, let's talk a little bit about what was available and some of the new functionality that our folks had. So the next slide talks about some examples of what's new. And if you remember when I talked a little bit about Lawson being a historical system, one of the other things about Lawson that was interesting is certainly the limited visibility that folks had to Lawson. Lawson was a little bit more technical system, again, a legacy system, 20 years in the making. But ultimately, we had about 600 employees who had access to Lawson. And you fast forward to Workday, where every single employee has access and the ability to have self-service functionality. It's just such a tremendous change that a lot of the change management is a big piece of this. But here's what's new. Employees just having self-service capabilities, having visibility to their manager, being able to update their people page so that they can provide great information and their managers and employees coworkers can get to know them a little bit better. For managers, online visibility to their team and organization. With the Lawson approach, it was managers working through their employee advocates to get a lot of the information about their teams. Certainly they understood and knew their teams because of the constant and great relationships that they had. But ultimately, if you wanted to understand, pay rates and things like that, you needed to work through your employee advocate for all of that. And of course, Workday opened up just a ton of visibility and opportunity with that. The access to people pages. So we pride ourselves on developing our people and allowing for opportunity. So folks may transfer from one store to another, from one division to another. And through that process, as you can imagine, they're going into a new store where they may not know anybody. So being able to introduce them to their managers through the use of a people page so that they can get to know that employee and right off the bat, when they sit down with them, have some background information and knowledge and allows them to make them feel more welcome. For human resources, certainly enhanced service and support. Again, we talk about real-time visibility to data, simplified and streamlined HR processes as we went through the implementation and made sure that we took a look at every single one of our business processes and what opportunities there were to optimize that. And of course, what was certainly important for us is the ability to support future growth. For our leadership, again, online visibility and another opportunity for them to be able to get right into the system and see great information about their organization, about their people. And this is information that typically had to go through HR in the past. So that transparency to people data as it grows and continues to grow richer over time has just been fantastic. And we talked a little bit about in the talent spaces as we continue to develop our talent and our people and allow them to grow with the company, being able to do succession planning in a very organized and systematic way. So the next couple of slides, I'm going to be exploring some specific functionality that we were able to leverage Workday to create just an enhanced and improved employee experience for. The first one we've been talking a little bit about, and I'll get into that a little bit more. This is the people page. So the people page is this opportunity for our managers and our leaders to get to know our folks. So there's a lot of just great basic information about our people, how long they've been with the company, what their interests might be, what their career path looks like, maybe a little bit about their family or family members that also work at Wegmans, some things that they like to do outside of work. So a great just opportunity to introduce somebody to somebody on their team that might be new, get to learn about them a little bit more and understand what their goals might be for the future. So the old process was all about paper. So it took us about 4 years to get 14,000 people pages in the system, and we had to manually load all of that information. And then the rest were stored in binders or on shared drives, and there was limited access to that, of course. But as you can imagine, if you wanted to learn something about somebody and you had to go find a binder to get that people page, it's not very easy to do that. So fast forward to Workday and what we were able to implement with our digital people page. We are now at about a 90% completion rate with those people pages. We've got 48,000 plus people pages entered in the system with manager visibility and access to those. And we can start to actually report off of the information in those people pages across the entire company. So just a great benefit for us, again, as we get to understand and learn about our people so that we can make sure that we're doing everything for them to develop them and further their careers. The next functionality that I talk a little bit about is the employee experience in general. Right from onboarding, right from recruiting through onboarding. In the old world, when you came to your orientation, there were generally 12 to 15 pieces of paper that you might need to fill out. With the online onboarding process, we eliminated about 150,000 pieces of paper. All of that is done online now, and now that makes your orientation more about Wegmans and you and the future. We had some manually created paper org charts. We had a few org charts that were in the system, but it was very limited. Visibility to those org charts were very limited. And now, of course, with Workday, we've got that online real-time access to org charts. And as people move throughout the organization, again, those org charts become automatically updated, and you have the latest information. We think about online address changes. A lot of that process was done manually and through paper that was submitted to our payroll department or our benefits departments. So now folks have safe self-service capabilities to be able to do that. Another great thing about the system, being able to put photos in there. So now you're able to put faces with names, and that's just great. So at the time that I captured this, there was about 25,000. I know we have more than 25,000 photos at this point. So again, it's more than half of our population that has put their photo in Workday, and that's just fantastic for us as again, we learn more about our people and get to know them. All right, and then this next one is about our wage increase programs. This is one of those manual processes from before. So we had hundreds of files that needed to be created and might have been needed to be distributed to be reviewed through email. to select groups, and they were all protected. So it's not necessarily the fact that some of that was being sent via email, because it was all about the process was right. It just was very manual. And then we had to manually track terms and new hires as we were going through that increase program. There was a lot of emails and phone tag and follow-up. So as you can imagine, it's just a very difficult process that required a lot of hours of work from some folks that just have some amazing organizational skills, I'll say, and high standards certainly to keep track of all that. And then you fast forward to Workday, and everything is system driven. It's all about the eligible population. In some instances, you can auto calculate your increase amounts based on step progressions, etc. You can have multiple populations in one file. You can have there's a comp review worklet, so it's kind of that one-stop shop. We created an interactive grid for the managers to look at the increases and what that looks like across their teams and organizations. And of course, once we execute, those updates are in real time. The increases automatically feed into payroll, and we built an automatic wage increase statement process so that we can actually have that opportunity to sit down with our employees and celebrate the increases. So again, it's all about having a simple, transparent and visible process that talks to the power of one and the capabilities within Workday. And then, so those are three great examples of some enhancements, some improvements that we got day one from our Workday implementation, and there's certainly hundreds of more that we could talk about. But ultimately, at the end of the day, after our journey, at least through those first three phases and through this, we're at about 2.5 years of being live. What's the end result? And this next slide talks a little bit about, what is the outcome? What does that look like for us? And ultimately for us, holistically, it's all about a significant increase in HCM capabilities with a reduced annual total cost of ownership. We were able to consolidate a convoluted network of legacy systems, some bolt-on applications, manual processes into a single solution in Workday. We retired 3 major applications, Lawson, Taleo, and SumTotal, and we retired more than 30 integrations as part of that process as well. We've empowered our workforce with visibility to data and access to self-service capabilities. Again, going back to the number of folks that had access previously being only at about 600 to having all 52,000 plus of our employees having access to their information today, as well as that great visibility for our managers. Real-time visibility to data with improved reporting capabilities and the ability to deliver insights. Some of the dashboards that we've been able to build have just been fantastic and really well received by our leadership, allowing them to make some by the insights it's delivering, just being able to provide great decision-making opportunities for them. Of course, it's more efficient and consistent through the use of automation, getting away from all of that manual work that we had in the previous system as well. And the final touch point for me is really a simplified support model. In the old world, we had 4 to 5 teams that might be part of a troubleshooting instance, and today that's down to 2 teams, and what might have taken up to 8 hours before maybe is generally resolved within 2 hours today. So again, simplifying that support model just makes everything more efficient for the entire organization. So I feel like I've talked enough, and I think we can open it up for questions at this point. And I certainly appreciate everyone's time today, and hopefully you've learned a little bit of something based on our journey.
Thank you so much, Adrian. So to kind of kick us off on the questions, and as a reminder to everybody on the call, if you do have any questions, please submit them in the chat, and we will capture those and make sure that they get answered. So to kick us off, Adrian, looking back at your project, what are some of your biggest lessons learned? And as a follow-up to that, is there anything you would have done differently?
Sure, sure. This is a great question, and it's one that we often hear whenever we're talking with other either potential customers or customers of Workday. And when we think back about this, there isn't necessarily one thing that we would do differently. However, we have identified 3 areas of focus that we believe are extremely important, and you know, certainly our advice to customers is that they just make sure that they have the right focus, that they have the right resources, and they provide adequate time for these areas. So as we think about those, for us, it was data transformation, migration, and validation. We eventually involved a data architect in that process, but we didn't start with that. And so it kind of took us through kind of that first build where we realized, you know what, we had some issues with some of the data that we were migrating. And ultimately, as we pulled a data architect into the conversation, that went away very quickly for us. And it was just, again, about getting the right resource involved in the conversation. And of course, Workday was a big help with that as well. But you know, some of it just goes back to you understanding and be able to extract your own data out of a legacy system that Workday may know nothing about. Also, data quality, consistency, and governance, very, very critical. So making sure that, you know, when you're looking at your legacy system, you know, what is the data quality? Here's a great opportunity as you might migrate to a new system to make sure that you're doing everything you can to only put clean data into the new system. And are there opportunities to simplify and, you know, making sure that you're only going after that data that's really important to you as an organization and that's going to help you move forward. And is there other areas where you might be able to simplify or kind of reduce some of that? Integrations was a second area. I think I mentioned in the slide deck that we had over 130 integrations that we needed to review as part of this process. And ultimately that resulted in about 100 Workday integrations. So, you know, we were able to retire over 30 of those. And of those 100 that we did implement as part of this process, we made sure that we took a look at those and said, are there opportunities there as well? Can we make it better? Can we make it more efficient? Do we need to change that in any way? And as you can imagine, that takes quite a bit of time to get through all of that with your IT teams and any vendors that you might have to involve in that process too. So again, making sure that you have the right focus on there on integrations is very, very important. And finally, reporting. Certainly last in my report here, but not the least of which needs to be considered. Workday just does a great job. They have so much data in the system, and they do a great job of providing a ton of delivered reports. But ultimately for your organization, that may not, you know, some of those may work and some may not. So you may have the need for custom reports. So making sure that you're upfront thinking about your reporting needs, the requirements for those reports. Can you take advantage of the delivered reports? And certainly I would recommend that if you can, do that. But if not, then those custom reports take time to write and to validate and maybe tweak a little bit and revalidate and test. So that process, what we've heard and what we found is that a lot of customers kind of leave that towards the end. And then you're kind of playing a little bit of catch up, and that might take a little bit of time and energy to do so. So yeah, ultimately I would say that those 3 areas are areas that I would recommend for any customer that is going through this process to make sure that you do a deep dive into and understand very thoroughly.
Great, thank you. One additional question is, you know, with COVID still top of mind for most people right now, what are some of the challenges that have surfaced for you during this pandemic, and how have you been required to adjust or pivot in order to meet those challenges? Oh,
sure. Just like everybody else, you know, we were learning day to day. Guidance was changing day to day. But what we found is Workday was just a tremendous asset to us during this time, and allowed us to react quickly in a number of ways. A few examples that I can think of certainly is just having that real-time access to employee data. So understanding our employee population, it's all about our operations. So each of our divisions, each of our stores, understanding how many employees we had in every store. You know, as any organization found is that as folks are going out, you know, what are the needs? And we found that some employees would voluntarily take themselves out of the workforce, and some because they were high risk, and others just because they weren't sure. There was a lot of just questions at the time. So we needed to understand that. We needed to understand what our employee base looked like, and what kind of recruiting do we need to do, and do we need to backfill, and what does that look like? So reporting out of Workday became very, very important from us from day one, and that the access to that and our ability to deliver on those reports very quickly and make changes to those reports when needed became just vital. So that was one area where we knew that Workday was just a great boon for us. The other one is if you think about how do you reward your employees for everything that and all the uncertainty that was certainly going on in the beginning months, and Workday allowed us to react quickly to that too, and be able to take care of our employees through a number of different ways. One, just being able to react quickly with a comp program. So what does that look like, and how can we implement something to reward those folks on the front lines? And as I mentioned, we were able to create, discuss, and deploy a compensation program that was very, very well received. So those are just a couple of examples, but ultimately I'm sure there's others that other customers found very, very valuable. But to me, the biggest thing is just being able to react very quickly, especially in a time where things were changing so rapidly.
Great, thank you. It looks like that's all the questions we have. So just a couple quick reminders. This has been recorded, so this will be available tomorrow for folks to listen to again or to forward to other colleagues. If you do have any questions following this webinar, please reach out to us and we will be happy to get those answered for you. We really thank all of you for joining today. I hope you found this valuable, and that if you, again, if you have any questions following this, please reach out and we will get those answered. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Walter. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.